name is ZeanTsoi, very close shot, because not most of the time. So I'm here to talk to you today, this morning, about building semantic APIs using Django REST Framework. Now, it's a big mouthful, and it is long to go over. We have 45 minutes, and we'll see how much we can get through, because it's something that's, I think, really important for the community. It's a very strong community, and really I hope that if you're not familiar with it already, that this is kind of a nice entryway into that whole world. So I guess I should start with a little bit about me. I'm a full stack engineer at Reddit. If you're not familiar with Reddit, that is the company that never, ever gets any credit for doing anything that isn't completely awful. So, I mean, this is true. I didn't realize until I started working there about a year ago that the struggle was real. So, but yeah, so I'm out in San Francisco. I actually started my career here in Salt Lake City, not here, but in Salt Lake City, working for Reddit. We had an e-commerce division out there. One of our initiatives at that point, it was about a year ago, was to create a crowdfunding platform. Now, I don't know who here is familiar with Reddit Gifts, but we had a platform called redditmade. It was kind of short-lived, but really it was our big foray into the crowdfunding world. And from a tech perspective, it was interesting for me as a Python Django developer, because it was really our first foray into going into looking at Django REST Framework. Now, I didn't know anything about Django REST Framework before this, and I've come out with a lot more knowledge. Hopefully, I can try to impart some of that. So, I usually like to start these off by just getting an idea of who is familiar with what I'm going to be talking about. Is everyone here a developer? Okay, Python, Django. Does anyone here have familiarity with Django REST Framework? Nice. Okay, you use it in production?
Starting to.
Awesome. Yeah. Are you on V2, V3?
Yeah, we're on version 3.
Okay. Awesome. It seems like it's a fairly well used and supported framework. It's probably the largest, to my understanding, and best supported of all the RESTful APIs out there for Django. I think probably, just in open source in general is a very well-known thing, so I think it's good that we can have this discussion and talk a little bit more about what's going on. So I think we're going to go in 4 parts here. First, and please, if I'm mumbling, if I'm going too fast, too slow, if you have any questions, or if I'm just flat out wrong, I really encourage you to chime up, because I don't know if you guys touches. So please feel free to so why Django REST Framework? I'll give you a little bit of my experience, tell you some of the struggles we've gone through, some of the challenges, some of the successes that we've had using the Django REST Framework. Then I want to go through sort of an overview of both V2, which has been outstanding. It's been around for, I think, about 3 years now. And now we're just barely migrating to V3. That's pretty new. I don't think there's a whole lot of documentation out there. I mean, it's fully documented, but there's not a whole lot of knowledge about it. And I think I want to take some time, because it seems like there are a number of people here that don't have a whole lot of familiarity with it. Let's take a deeper dive with the code. The code is not very complex, but sometimes it just takes kind of walking through it to be able to really see why it makes things so easy. Because in my view, the biggest gain that we have from using things like Django REST Framework and Django REST Framework in particular is that it makes development, especially developing APIs, super, super easy. Okay, so why REST Framework? So I think you raised your hand. Was there a decision at your organization to go with REST Framework over something else?
Yeah, well, I researched just the different frameworks that would be fairly compatible with Django, and this seemed like a clear winner. It had a lot of community support,
sure,
and it was really clean, everything was seen. So we dove in.
Yeah, that's right. And
so far, so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would completely agree with you, and I think it's very, very well supported. It's very clean. It does basically what API developers want, without a lot of other sort of cruft that they don't. So for us, the big win was cutting down the development time. We had looked at making API using Flask, maybe migrating over to Ruby on Rails, and really it looked like the way that the community was moving was more towards APIs on Django, and more specifically on REST Framework. It's very, very robust. So everything that you can handle in Django, you can handle by itself in REST Framework, be it validations, serialization. I mean, if you look at the API documentation, there's tons and tons of material as to all the features it has. It's really robust, and it really left us with a complete feature set that we didn't have to worry about trying to polyfill or backfill, because it was all right there. And then finally, it is pretty unobtrusive with Django. You use as much of it or as little bit as you want. You can use it for a single endpoint, or you can use it for your entire site. I'll tell you a little bit more about what we did in our own implementation, because we have a full, I would say that we use it like everywhere in our stack, but I've also seen it where people just will throw up a single endpoint. It's a pretty light library, so if you just wanted it for that 1 or 2 endpoints, it's not too bad. Just drop it in and you're ready to go. All right, so the product that we use this with was redditmade. Now, if you're online, you can check out redditmade.com right now. What I will caution is that it's no longer in existence. They had made like a business decision to basically go for growth with the core product as opposed to like crowdfunding. So this kind of got left out in the dark. But even that being said, why don't I just pull that up and we can take a look at what we're working with. That looks wrong.
Yeah, it's going to be something.
Oh, yeah, it's the UVU.
Oh.
The light finally.
For me.
Conversation.
Is this because you just switched to a incognito?
Yeah, I think I closed one note and back up.
Yeah. Guess I just.
So click on guess who have been given a pro user.
I haven't been given a
Like,
account.
but we all have. So
Oh, okay.
Barred.
Should I just do this?
go back.
Go back. Yeah, go back.
How is it working for Reddit?
I like it. We started out working here in Salt Lake. We had a pretty large team here working on e-commerce, and then they made the decision to. I'm sorry, can you continue?
Yeah, try
It's Openwest.
and it's capital O, capital W.
Sorry.
Capital O, capital W. And that's where it is capital U, and then the west is capital W.
I was going to ask you for an email.
It's one more shop. Okay. That's 10. Password is.
That's not that.
EST. They have it.
I'm gonna type it right here.
It's okay.
Let's see if I can. UWEST, capital U, capital W. So, that's it. Okay. All right. Yeah, so working for Reddit's great. Living in San Francisco is nice. So no complaints. We're growing a lot. We focused our attention away from e-commerce as it were towards what is our full offering, Reddit.com. If you're a pretty hardcore user, you'll notice a lot of changes with our mobile site. We're investing a lot of effort to revamping for the next generation, which is mobile. So I'm actually on I got moved off this project to work on the ads platform. Right now we have a pretty anemic ads platform, and I'm one of the engineers that's trying to get that more towards where everyone else wants to go. Right. So maybe I'll bail on this.
sometimes this part takes a little bit.
Yeah.
It takes forever.
It takes forever, and then do you guys,
And they-
did everybody else get prompted for another email? Like,
Yeah, that's right, and then, and
Yeah.
then,
It's tech, right?
Okay, so with redditmade, what we wanted to do was to try a completely new technology stack, something that was brand new, and our front-end guys were really interested with React. Now, I don't know if you guys are front-ends, if you have any experience with React, but it's really, really smooth UI, UX interface that came from Facebook. It's awesome. It really handles everything. It really focuses on client-side rendering, which means that we have to have some serving up from the server side. So basically, we said in our minds the best thing to go with to facilitate client-side rendering was to go with a JSON API. So without the internet, it's tough to show you what the implementation looks like, but suffice it to say,
just throw in your first name and
has anyone ever used redditmade or seen it before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't use it.
So it gave us a really, really nice, nice visual. It gave us, like a UX that UI and the UX that we really liked because everything was handled client side. And we just left, just all the JSON calls to the back end. So maybe I'll come back to that. All right, so talk a little bit about V2 in review. I think a number of you have worked in V2. That's been around for a really long time. I think that it was first open sourced about 3 years ago. The community is very, very active. Tom Christie, who's the author, is always on the speaking circuit, very engaged, and that's one of the reasons why we had a lot of confidence going with REST Framework, because we knew that it was always going to have the support that we want in an open source product. What's tough though is that, and I'm being kind of overly pedantic with these criticisms because there isn't a whole lot to criticize, but there is V3 that's out there. So I just want to kind of highlight what the gap is. So serialization is a big part of any REST API, and particularly with Django REST Framework, I think that kind of sits at the very, very core. Everything runs through serializer, and that's basically the thing that runs a lot of business logic that otherwise maybe a controller or even maybe the model would have taken on. Serialization, in my view, was a little bit messy because basically if you're doing a lot of mutations to the object itself via the serializer. So what would happen is that you get a big JSON blob. You deserialize that, you get the object from that, you make a mutation on the object, and then you re-serialize it, which to me didn't quite make sense. That's been fixed in V3. We can talk a little bit more about how that worked, but I would say one of my complaints would have been serialization. The second thing was nested relationships were almost impossible. This was actually a roadblock for us. What would happen was that we had nested objects, even 1 or 2 levels down. You could only update the top level object. You couldn't update anything on the bottom without a hack. Now, you think of the implementations where that would cause problems. We had a crowdfunding platform where we have a campaign, each campaign has products. Now, we can update the campaign, but you'd think that sometimes when you update the campaign, you also simultaneously update the product. You just couldn't. We'd have to hack around that. We'd have to come up with these kind of weird solutions that just didn't really feel right. There were following some anti-patterns that we didn't want to go with. This was actually an outstanding issue to the core developers. They knew about this, and they decided to punt on this until V3. So this was an outstanding issue for about a year, and it's recently been fixed. Overall, it's pretty good though. All right, V3 we call it a step beyond because really it fixes all the cruft and all the messiness between serializers and objects. It divests the mutation of objects from serializers. Now any sort of mutation has to be necessarily passed through the serializer, which personally I think it's the right way to do things because well, I mean, we'll get a little bit more into how that works. The nested relationships issue is also fixed. So now you can edit both a parent and a child, and you can actually edit multiple children on a parent at the same time. So all in all, I think that with these two things fixed, this would really have solved a lot of problems had we had this a year ago when we started to develop. We just didn't. But knowing this now, if we could do the whole thing over again, I wouldn't hesitate for a second to use V3, especially from what we're seeing right now. Right, so what I was hoping to do was to dive into some code. For those of you who are interested in following along, on GitHub is my username. DRF2 would be Django REST Framework 2, and then DRF3. Those are complete Django projects. You can actually move those up right now and have that running. It's just running on SQLite, so you just have a database in a flat file. So, but if you just want to follow along here, I'm just going to pull it up and we look at it on my, oops, that was, sure. Your repos aren't coming up. Well, they're not.
Just put it directly into the URL, you get there, so github.com/ZeanTsoi-DRF3, and that works.
Yeah, so if you want to clone that, that's fine. There are instructions down here for doing the whole thing. Otherwise, you will work out it afterwards, but we'll take a pretty deep dive right now. So, as I mentioned, at the heart of Django REST Framework is the notion of serializers. Serializers are what are taking objects. You can take any object, you can take any sort of Python object, or more importantly for us, you can take any sort of model-backed object. And that's basically what we're working with. So the first level abstraction would be just a serializer and serialize anything. So So I'm going to go through version 2 right now, and then we can go and look at the diff between version 2 and version 3, because it's not really all that different, so let's take a closer look at version 2. All right. So in this implementation, it's very, very simple. We have a very, very simple model. So this would kind of approximate what we were doing over at redditmade. It's a campaign, and it belongs to a user. Now, again, very, very bare bones, but it gives us an idea of like what we're starting with, right? So there's nothing special about this. This is pure Django right here. There's nothing different about what we're doing here. We can see it here also. How's that? Better? Okay. So again, we're not doing anything special here. Now, the serializer here is where stuff starts to get interesting, because the serializer is where we start to define what we want our JSON blob to look like. So if we're going to pass our serializer something, and it's going to pass something back. Now, we're still going to run everything through views. Views are what handle the endpoints. So let me pull up the. In our most raw least abstracted implementation, what we'll do is we'll call the JSON response object here, and then we'll have a class here, campaign list, okay? It's going to handle all things having to do with get requests and, well, not get requests, but getting all campaigns. It's going to handle also posts. Campaign details where we handle basically everything else. It's going to handle puts, deletes, gets on the campaign itself, and maybe I can convince like how this looks. So we have right now this is all functional. We look at the request method. Request is actually an object in Django REST Framework. That's not Django's request. So this contains special data that we only get if we're going to hit the Django REST Framework endpoint. And if the method is get or post, we're going to parse it as such down here. Now, in this implementation, we're looking specifically at JSON, although there is an HTML implementation, which is pretty interesting because it gives you a browsable API, which is very useful for documentation. And we'll get into that next. But this at bare in its implementation right here look like this gives us back pure JSON, right? So what we see here is a collection of 3 campaigns, and on it are the 2 attributes, its ID and its name. So that's pretty simple. We can do whatever mutations we want that we've declared down here. So that includes get, put, and delete. Now that's a very, very most basic implementation here. So we can get a lot more complex. Again, this is functional right now, and this takes what's called here. This gets us to the next level, which is a browsable API. Now, in this case, it's still a functional schema. Still have get, post, and all this. But right now, we're wrapping it in this API view, which says that for get and post, we're going to do something special with it. Now, in this case, what it means is that it's going to respond back right here with this response. It's going to take this. It's going to take the serializer. It's going to pump out the data in 2 forms. So again, that's called. These are just different endpoints for the same information, and this is all the same information that we're just looking at in different ways. Okay, so this ships with Django REST Framework. This is the browsable API that we found so compelling because as long as it's not like sensitive information, this is fantastic to be able to parse back and forth, be able to look at it visually. I assume this is available in V3. I think I've seen it. It's something great. Yeah, I mean, so it's great. You can make so all these things are like hot linkable, so you can link back and forth between parents and children. It's awesome. It gives you a certain interface to play with, just to make sure that everything's working, so you don't have to keep on, trying to curl all your requests. At the same time, if you wanted to, you could. Right, but if you were to make a JSON request on this, it would give you back this as the JSON back you see right there. Next step up from this is to go from this functional-based schema to something that's class-based. We like classes because Basically, they're more reusable, they're more extensible. If we want to make a change, we're just going to subclass it, make that change rather than having to rewrite the entire function. So class-based we have right here. So now you see that we have two different classes. We have one that's for lists. Again, that's for getting the entire list of campaigns, or it's for posting a single campaign. And then detail. Let's just walk through one of these functions here so that we have an idea of what's happening. When a campaign hits this endpoint here, this endpoint is determined by URLs. Hold on. This is called. So when someone hits an endpoint called class-base/campaigns, it's going to route them to this right here, this get. It's going to take that request. That request contains the JSON map that we wanted. It's going to okay, so it will take all our campaigns here, right there. We'll pass it to this serializer, which will serialize it to this JSON formation here, and then it will respond back with that. Make sense? Not very complicated, which is why I love this. Like, it started to work immediately out of the box, which is a fantastic thing for us. Okay. The issue with this API view right here is that we're still doing a lot of stuff that the models do themselves. So we could go one level of abstraction further, and just say, okay, we know that for all list type requests, we're going to have a single query. It's going to be the same query each time. So what Django REST Framework does is it abstracts all that to what we call a query set. We define what the query set is, which in this case is going to be your entire universe right here. You can just define what your serializer class. You'll get all this stuff for free. So again, this is called, this is class-based. And that gives us the exact same information. So basically, we went from having all this code here, having the exact same thing represented in all this code here, and we've condensed all that to just this. I guess that looks about the same. But in a lot of cases, it's going to be way shorter. It'll get way shorter when we get towards few cents. Right. Now, what we can do here is inject a level of authentication. So we'll do that next. Right. So right now we have two models. We have users and we have campaigns. Campaigns always have to have a user. Presumably, you're going to want to protect access, like write access to the campaign, and limit that to only the people who have created that campaign itself. This is where we do that. We do that just using abstractions that REST Framework just gives us. So in this case, we just define a permissions class. We'll take a look at the permissions class. What this does is this takes the request object, which has our user information stored as a session. If the request method is a safe method, meaning it's a get, it's a non-repeating method, we'll just say we're okay. Otherwise, it's going to check whether or not the object in question, so in this case it's a campaign, matches the user.
Everything going okay?
By the end user.
You want a water? Sure. Okay. Couple things.
What we have here is
want to let
pre-saved
everyone know
code.
the lunch.
What that'll do
change.
is whenever
Right.
the post is made,
Supposed to be
because in this case, your campaign list these things that have been posted.
Oh, good.
Whenever
And he's
the
asking
campaign
us
is
to write
saved,
count
we're
of the
associated with
Yeah.
the user that's
And-
in the current request.
Perfect.
Right here.
All right. Recording, everything's going okay?
Okay.
Perfect.
And the campaign
Thank you,
detail is
sir.
going to deal with all the
Rock
posts,
it on.
deal with all the
All right.
deletes, and it's going to deal with all the gets specific campaigns. So to see this in practice, what we can do is, let's move over, this is authenticated, so we'll move that endpoint here. Right. So right now I can see all these campaigns, but I can't add to them. That's because right now I have a permission called is authenticated or read only, which means I have to be authenticated or else I can't write. So if I log in, and again, REST Framework gives us a bunch of authentication classes, so we don't have to worry about that ourselves. Then we're able to post. So the difference was we didn't have that little field down here. So we want to post, then do okay, you sure? Now, right here, I can edit this. This is at this point. This is the detail view. So we're specifically on campaign. And if we go back to that right here. And again, this is with the same small amount of code. We get a lot out of it. Now, with the authentication class, because campaigns are specific to a user, if I were logged in as another user, I wouldn't be able to edit. I'd be able to view all this, but I couldn't edit anything that I didn't create because it wasn't through that permissions class and checks the validation that way.
So if we logged in as a different user, would we be able to see new shirt?
Yeah, it's too bad. User field. Now remember, I'm able to both post and edit the campaign I created, which was campaign. So logged in as ZeanTsoi, my user, I'm able to edit this or post strings onto it. And I log out. Back in. I'm at the same view, but I don't have any sort of write access to it. So even if I tried to curl a post request up here, it would reject it. It would be a 403. So that's all handled with a matter of just a few lines of code. That was a really compelling thing for us to be able to roll Django authentication into permissions here. It gives a lot of helper classes that facilitate that. And that's one of the reasons why we're able to speak to it. Now, a final level of abstraction. So this is sort of the full thing with authentication here. And what is called a view set. A view set is a class that automatically gives every single RESTful endpoint. And it knows what you're trying to hit, and it intelligently directs or facilitates and routes your request as such. So that with just this much code right here, we're going to do everything that we've already done, but it's a matter of 6 lines of code as opposed to getting back to where we were before. That's all this. That is this whole thing that is rolled up into just this right here. Again, this is probably operating on a level of abstraction that is maybe not practical to some users. You're not going to be able to get the granularity that you want out of this. When you're working on redditmade, we did everything basically on step down from this, where we were able to fiddle with some things a little bit more. But again, if all you want is maybe like an MVP product, or you just want to get a fully RESTful API out and running super fast, then this will do it in a matter of like an hour or two. So it's fantastic. This was V2. So what I want to do now is kind of bring up the screen and see what's changed between V2 and V3. And just out of curiosity, has anyone worked with both V2 and V3 or is looking to upgrade? Okay, so I know that a number of you are using V2. If you're thinking of upgrading to V3, V3 does have, it is a benchmark, and there are breaking changes, but the breaking changes are pretty simple to get through. You just have to read the change logs, and it's a fairly non-tedious thing. It's definitely doable. So really, the only thing that has changed.
I can hear you now, as long as it lasts.
Is the serializer. A number of view methods have also, but it's primarily in the serializer. We can take a quick look at how those have manifested. So this is our old serializer class here. Here. These are really the only thing that has necessarily changed is the way that version 3 works is that everything that is an association, so not the object itself, not the serialization of the object itself, but if it's a serialization of anything adjacent to it, be it a parent or a child, it's going to be read-only unless you explicitly say that it's not. So this, in my view, is a good thing. We're being explicit as to what we can mutate, what we can't. You're not going to have, hanging chats out there. We don't know, like, why does this mutate? Well, the reason why is because you can't mutate anything unless you're necessarily passing through a serializer that's meant to mutate that specific thing. It reduces chances of like mutating something bad, but it also kind of increases like your code base, but not by a whole lot. I'm trying to think of some other changes that were implemented too. Really, like I had to make very, very few changes to get what was effectively version 2 running exactly as version 3. I actually just ported this thing over. So some of the changes would be, say, in classes here. So this would be. So again, this is using our API view. This is the one that gives us like either list views or detailed views. And in version 3, something similar.
Tons of things to measure like that. Only a limited amount of time.
So difference.
What you have to do.
So actually in version 3, the same API view has been the pre-save hook here to save the input object has been just abstracted into the class itself. So that will save you a little bit. And we can actually get this running here. So in this case, we're looking at a user. It effectively works the same way. But now we have a few mutations that we can make that are kind of interesting. So say for instance that we didn't want to view campaigns by their ID, but we want to see them by their name. That's as easy as changing the serializer. So we have the campaign serializer and the user serializer. What I would do is I would, right now it's just taking, by default, the user serializer will say, it'll take the primary key of the child. If we just define that we want something else, for instance, we want the entire serialized campaign, I'll just define up here, and get a whole representation here. So that's super useful. You get kind of like unwieldy if you're looking at too many things. But if you're looking at it, you can certify it, it's pretty fast. It's interesting because also if you have a very, very deeply nested data structure, so you have users who own campaigns, who own products, who own customers. You can just pass something called depth equals 2. So what this will do is that this will traverse that entire tree, and you'll get the entire serialized representation of a user's campaigns and all those campaigns' products. At each point, it becomes flat. So this is also super useful if you're not running out too much data. We've actually been able to run like really, really big JSON bags through depth, and it works pretty well. So these are just a lot of small abstractions that make REST Framework really, really powerful out of the box. It's all stuff that we would have had to have built ourselves anyways, but because it's so well supported, because it just kind of came out of the box, we just built this. So that's more or less the long and short of our experience. I know that I left a lot of subjects hanging out there, but if is there anything else that I can kind of run you through? I know that, yeah, please.
So, let's say you're coming from something like Piston, you made a bad choice, the Piston project kind of died. You wanted to migrate to this. Is there, maybe you don't know, but anybody else, is there a migration path to this, or do you just kind of like say it's the V3 of my API?
So what is Piston?
Piston was a project that I think Atlassian put out and open sourced as very like identical type of project with this. They put it out and then nothing happened since like 2012. So it's a totally dead project. And it has so many of the same concepts and everything, but it's done dead.
Sure. So is the concern sort of that it may at some point kind of lose interest?
Not well. I mean, I would like to get to this. This is way better than Piston, and it's alive and supported. I was curious about the migration path. If you're on an old REST system and type on the Django.
So, so long as it's in Django, really, all this provides is the API. The entire backend is still all Django ORM. It doesn't do anything special with that data. All the models are the exact same. There's really nothing from REST Framework that gets injected into the models. So the models, and presumably the data structure, data store, remain entirely the same. So at any second, if we wanted to go from a persistent client-side rendering, we could rip that out and drop in server-side rendering, just plain old Django templates. People are doing it the other way around. So what Reddit Gifts, which is our larger Gifts platform, have done is they were doing server-side rendering via Django templates, and they ripped all that out and they subbed in this sort of do with an Angular front end. So for us, it was a drop-in solution. If Piston runs on Django, presumably, I would imagine that the migration path would be too hairy unless Piston Last was supported by the older version of Django. Because I think REST Framework supports as far back as 1.4. I don't know that, but I was looking for that. One more.
Can I ask you some more questions about, like, so at Reddit, maybe I don't know if you can talk about it, but like, what's your WSGI server? What do you use database coolers with Django?
So I actually don't know that. We don't actually use Django at Reddit. We are on a very old Pylons stack. We've been trying to build an API out with that. I mean, we do have an API, public API. That's all built out. For a long time, we ran on a script to go out there, exclusive, and that managed to go. So we have a long work. So I don't speak to what the stack is specifically. I do know that Period is a new Pylons project that is et cetera, to the extent that those dialogues.
So when you're running this right now, you're not using it in conjunction with Django, it's just running with your Python system?
Right, so we're not actually running this right now. So this written for our old redditmade platform, which is just defunct at this point. It's still up there, so you can go to redditmade.com and browse some campaigns. But this is not tied in to Reddit. And I don't know whether or not Django I don't know if this is going to be proven out at scale. For our purposes, for sort of a burgeoning crowdfunding platform that just want to get out there and kind of test the waters, it would be a no for us.
Would you say that,
So Reddit Gifts was migrating to this framework. Reddit Gifts also has been taken down at this point. But yeah, so they were on a legacy Django framework going back about 4 years. And they very, very slowly and painfully migrated up to about Django 1.4. At which point they were able to sort of drop in some of these endpoints. And I mean, the performance gains, the UI gains, like the accolades we were getting from our users, really, really like showed that this at least for us was the way forward. We really wanted to get away from server-side rendering, and this was one of the easiest ways to do that without breaking our entire stack out. Okay. How are we doing?
We should go.
Okay, cool. So let me tell you, if you are Reddit users, and you want to send me a PM, /ZeanTsoi, I'll get you some gold. So whatever that's worth. And yeah, thank you. I hope you take a close look at Django REST Framework. I hope you sort of support the community. It's a really great tool out there. And if you're wondering, I think just dive right in and you'll find that it's really easy.